Okay, so I'm hoping to try to have some interactive stuff. So if everyone is able to get logged in, I'll try to paste code onto the Slack also. And what I'm going over today is how to use a custom class that is designed to help collect income information. So I found this project we're doing with DLP. It's been a thing that's popped up over and over again. Caroline suggested this TAFDC eligibility question where it exists, and really it's like a pattern that comes up a lot in legal aid. So here is the basic information about the module. So this is a module that you can install in Docassemble. We talked about like the Docassemble.base.util class and the core module. So what it does is it adds some other functions and classes that you can use inside your Docassemble interview. The purpose of it is to collect financial statements, but it can do anything that involves income information, or here are the specific things I put in. So different types of income, jobs, including hourly jobs, vehicles, assets, and just in general expenses. So you can imagine like a lot of things fit inside an income. It can be something like a bank account is an income that earns interest over time. Assets also similarly covers a lot of kinds of things. And the benefit of using a class like this is it lets you do that kind of work over an arbitrary time period. So you can calculate total income. You don't have to write a bunch of really complicated questions each time. You just have to say what you want it to do, and it will help format it the right way for you. This list of, there's a bunch of predefined lists of income and asset types, and those particular things are all specifically focused at Social Security, but the specific things you need to gather for that, but they actually just are pretty good. It's a pretty good general list of the types of incomes, types of assets that someone might have, I think. You can use a couple of things that aren't really going to be covered in this particular class session. We're talking about use objects, groups, and some of the different methods that groups have to work with gathering multiple items. And a new one, I think, for everybody here is the generic object modifier. But we're not going to have to go into that in a lot of detail. So here's the basic way that you include the income module in your Docassemble interview. So let's just try this. We're going to try it with gathering a single or list of jobs. You can actually copy and paste this code, which I'll put on the Slack, into your Docassemble interview. And let's do this. We'll call it job example. Okay, I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen. Sorry, guys. Everybody in the room saw it, but everybody on the recording also won't see it. So let me just go through that. So the code is on the Slack, but again, here's what we were just going through. Just go through the slides. Here. So here's the link to the income module, github.com/GBLS, Docassemble-income, and those slides there. And here's the code. I'll pause on that just for a second so people on YouTube later, you can copy easily. I'm going to put it in the GitHub package also. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. What we have here. So at the beginning, we have a module statement. That's telling Docassemble we want to include this particular package. It's installed on the server. We don't have to do that step. If you're not using our server here, you have to install the package first. We have our objects block. So who can tell me what the name of our object is? Anybody else? Lena? So jobs on the left, we have the name of the variable. And on the right, what is this, Will? It's the name of the class. I can see you're itching to say it.
No, I don't know.
Okay, all right. So it's the name of the class or the kind of object. Remember, classes are the big concept, and then objects are the actual examples of the class. This .using syntax may be familiar, but what we're doing here is we're telling it, don't move on to collecting the next item in this list until you have this attribute filled in, which is called period. That's all that's doing here. Okay, so that's how we do the setup, basically. That's all it is, those two real lines. And now we need to know, are there any jobs on our list? So I guess I'm not really hiding the ball here, but so anybody tell me what this does right here? This question that we have here, just in the blue, yeah.
So what you're collecting for a group, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Is that the obvious answer? I mean,
yeah, no, I'm not trying to hide the ball here. I have the code on the screen, so I already actually said what we were going to do.
Yes, you were asking, but do I? Never mind.
Just the whole thing, just the whole
yeah.
the question. So yeah, so the first thing we need to know is, do they have any jobs? This is translating into the syntax of a list. And notice, though, what kind of object did we have? Do you remember? Caroline, you won't be able to answer this one probably.
I won't be able to.
Because you missed that slide.
Are you thinking about like a list or a definition, or is it something else? Kind of an object.
Well, let's go back and look at it. So, what type of object is this?
A list. No. Job list.
Yes, job list. It's a job list. More specific than a list, a job list.
Oh.
So, our job list class, it inherits from the DA list, which is the kind of group we talked about before,
right.
A list where you can collect multiple things. And this is one of the nice things about object-oriented programming. So you have your big parent class, you can have other ones that inherit the features of the top one, but they're still the same kind of object.
Is this job list object an object, like individual is an object?
Yes.
Okay, so it's already in the Docassemble world. It's not, unless it was it something that you actually?
It's something that I created, yeah.
In Python?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It is, yeah.
All right.
So this is just a little bit of an aside, but just wanted you to notice. So the same things that work with a list that we already went over for working with groups. This is like a really common pattern that you're going to see if you make your own Python class ever. You're going to probably inherit from the built-in list class and add on some new features to it. So I didn't have to rewrite all the code that lets you work with the DA list. This is basically a special kind of DA list, and that is possible because of something called inheritance, object inheritance.
So is this if you were in your in the playground and on the right you saw class, I can't remember, class. Did you see class? Did you see object also?
Yeah, I think they.
So would there be a little eye there that would tell you what the attributes are?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So let's see, what do we have here? I don't think I've saved this yet. So it only shows ones that are in there, and I haven't saved this yet. So once I save it, it's going to let me see. So this is referring to, so job list actually is inheriting from something called an income list, which is another class I made. Where is it here? Income list, yeah. And that's that in the brackets there, this, well, parentheses, that's telling you what object it inherits from.
Oh, when you look at the.
what type of, I shouldn't say object, I'm mixing object and class, which is easy to do, but I should at least be clear.
So these are all class.
Yeah.
All right. Even though it says okay, so jobs is the no.
Jobs are a special kind of income because jobs are jobs give you income, but you can have things like an hourly wage. It doesn't make sense for all kinds of income, only something that's a job.
So are you so we're looking at classes here, and then when you go, if you view that there isn't is there documentation, or have you added document? I mean, there's documentation.
Minimal documentation. Right? So each of these, you can click the little settings thing to get the methods, and you can see some of them have short documentation also. Not all of them do.
You can see what you can do with them.
You can at least see what you can do. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want you to notice that this is not a regular DA list, it's a special kind of DA list, but we can use all the same things that we do in a regular DA list. That's the main thing I want you to see. So let's add in that first question. And what I'm going to do is just update the Slack here with the latest version instead of making a new file. You can save some typing there if you need to, or if you have any problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our question here. If there are any jobs, what's the next thing that we probably want to ask? What else do we need to know? We're building a list of jobs.
So if they say yes, then you start asking them about the job. That's right.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty logical place to start.
Would you ask them whether salary or wages? Yeah, salary or wages. Or would you ask them who their employer is? Depends on what you
really need to know. But just to keep this really simple, let's just ask the most basic things. So. All right. I think you're probably right, and we want to know like who their employer is. So there's some fields built in for this. So let's say employer. And what am I going to write here for the variable name? This is going to be familiar. It's the same thing we talked about with groups a couple weeks ago.
It would be the job list. So you have job, what do you call it? Job list.
So we're not going to use job list. That's the name of the class. Here's our object name here, jobs. Employers is the right.
And then when you do you're starting to count them, right? So
yeah.
You put an I in there?
Yeah.
What do you call it? I.
Where would the I go?
It was right after.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. This is the first job, right?
Brackets, yeah. So this is the way we're telling it to access that item in a list. Lists have the square brackets and with a number following it. And dictionaries still use the square brackets, but you use these usually quoted key, that is. So yeah, employer, what else do we need to know?
Well, if you want to say salary, I mean, you would want to, there's difference between salary and wage now, right? So the depends on grade, if you get a salary or you get wages. You asked that question, wouldn't you? Do you get paid by the hour or do you get paid in salary? Or, I mean, that makes it more complicated, but we could pick what kind of job we're asking about. Or we could do it earlier, a question before what is your, what's your job title? Do you get paid by the hour or do you get paid a salary? I mean, that would be the question, right, for that job.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can give people actually a choice right here in the question. So like one thing we might ask them
Oh,
is like,
this particular-
how often are you paid? And we're going to still use that job I,
Frequency?
and it's called period. So it's consistent with the income class that's already built into Docassemble. And here we have a shortcut. So I don't know if anyone has seen this before. You might have seen it when you're collecting like person's name. You can use a function to generate options. So that's what we're doing here. So one of the examples in the example code is for collecting someone's name. There's a function that generates a list of suffixes like junior, senior, the third, and so on. And there's similarly, we do the same code trick for a list of states. So this is one that is, there's actually, this function is built into Docassemble, but I customized it for this income class too, to add some periods that made sense for us. Okay. So this is the function that we're going to use. It's just period list.
So that function,
It's built into the Docassemble.income class.
So it has all right, so then you get into this thing about the language. Is it bi-monthly? Okay, 55.
Period list. Just making sure I use the right name. So I don't think we need to use the integer data type, but maybe just in case. So period, I'll explain this, what it could be. Period is going to be a number between that's greater than 1. So 1 means a whole year. How much you earn over a whole year is 1. And if you earn it every month, it would be, you want to guess? Yeah.
A 112.
So not 1/12, it would be 12.
It would be 12.
Yeah.
So this is a code, this is like it's like, right. But no, it's not just a code. It's actually, you say it's manager, so you use it to divide, you use the value of it to divide.
There's a function in the Python class which multiplies out the income or divides it the right way. So you can say, okay, I collect my income every week, and can you convert it into a monthly income for me? So it just will save you that work of knowing, of making the person do the math. You don't ask them what's your hourly income, your monthly income. You just say, what do you get paid? How often do you get paid?
So isn't there something where you have to do? I thought there was like somebody did some calculation where it's 7.25 if you get paid weekly or something weird. It's not an integer number. Maybe but this would be okay, because 24 would be week. No, so if you get paid twice a month.
Mm-hmm. Then it would be 26. Yeah, 24 would be twice a month.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks would be 26.
Every 2 weeks, yeah, okay. So you get that, so that would work out, right? Yeah.
And I guess we don't account for leap years. We don't have to worry about that. So 265 would be how much you get paid a day.
But you still have this, in this bit, so how often are you paid? We're still not yet talking about people, wages versus salary. We're still not getting to that. So there are people who might work 20 hours in 1 week and 10 hours, if they're getting paid wages,
right.
Different. Their income can be really different.
Yep, that's definitely true. So I think that is something that's a problem that you can't really get rid of, because they usually want to know, like, what are your regular monthly wages?
Yeah.
So
so basically you do a health and say, just take your pay stubs from the last 2 months, or something like that. Yeah,
and I won't go into the hourly calculation. This does that too. I don't think we need to do it for this example.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to show you like the very basic things. Let's build up how you use one of the things in the class. And it's good,
and you want to get
good to see like, you can expand this, you can see what else is in there. It's good to know what that parentheses mean, because
then you know where to go to look.
Right. So under job lists, all that's listed are the special methods that apply to a job list. But you know to also look at income list to see what are things that are built into income list. And then from there, okay, if I want to know what I can do with the DA list, I go up one more level Those are all the things that you can do on that
Keep going
object.
until there are no more levels.
So you get to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but a mouse.
Which is
would
DA
be
list,
there, right?
actually, doesn't
When you
say
have a
DA
mouse, when you have a mouse, like what do you get paid? Right, we've got.
Yes, good point. That's something we haven't asked about yet. So, how much are you paid? Let's just say it that way. And the variable that the class knows about that you should use is called value. And what type of data is this going to be?
Well, that can't, right, well, it shouldn't be a number because it can't have, I mean, it can't be an integer, so it should be a number then.
We could use number. Yep, that would definitely work.
Or no, I guess that's right.
Currency would be the more specific option that we can choose, yeah. And that just, if I can spell it, any typos. Okay. So, all right, we started our list. We asked, are there any items? We have a question that asks about a job. What else do we need to know? What's the last question?
What's the next
we need
job?
to know?
I mean, if you have another job, then it isn't.
Yeah.
And do you want to say, like, in addition to the value of jobs there are, sorry, in addition to jobs, like you told me about, so if you say you have a few jobs, you told me about X, Y, and so in a question you say, you told me about X, Y, and Z.
It's good to reflect back to the user
Yeah.
for sure. I don't think we have to do that right now.
Okay.
I think that is a really good point. Generally, it's good to let people know what they've already told you, so you know that they've actually, that you processed it. So it's a really good point. So let's, anyone remember the name of that attribute? So this was there are any.
We want to increase, oh God, what was another?
Yes.
Another, there are another.
Or is it there's another, or is there another? I'm trying to remember now. I have there's another. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's right. Symmetric. Good. Okay. And let's just, I'll write a question here, which is going to show the outcome, and we'll make this, keep it simple, make that a mandatory question. Jobs.number. Remember, number is a shorthand to get the number of items. And let's see, do here. Let's use our for loop here. Let's go through all the items in the list. Let's see. And I'll put this on there. We don't have to go all over all the syntax. And I believe that if you just refer to the job, it will tell you the amount. But the explicit way to get it is with this .amount method.
So those are fun. Oh, wait a minute, is that a?
Methods, not functions, because they're part of a class. All right, let's see how many errors do I have. Oh, missing an N4. Okay, so let's see if it works, obviously. Once I confirm it works, then I will see. Say, or maybe 500 a month for that one. And I paid, see, 50 weeks. All right, 50 weeks, and we don't have any other jobs. All right, so course.
And that's about the ratio, isn't it? Between GBLS and ORI.
So I'm going to put that on there in case anyone had any typos they wanted to check. So what do you notice about this here?
It's not formatted as currency.
Okay, that's one thing to notice
and you're
for
also
sure.
not putting in the period of which you earn it.
So what is that period? Do you remember what we put in for the values? Can you guess what this period is here?
I thought there was one.
So we didn't type in 6,000 or 2,600 anywhere.
No,
Well,
I typed in 50 and 500.
50 and 500.
I can't
We did
remember.
500 per month and 50 per week, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. I thought they were both.
Well, then, we have the question per month and per week.
You don't
So what is
understand.
this?
You write,
Here.
If it was 500, that should be per month.
yeah.
Right. So what is the period that's being used here, I guess?
Oh,
Oh, 12? This is the value.
what's the period being used on
This display
Oh,
right
this
now,
is
yeah.
yearly.
Yeah, this is exactly
Yeah.
yearly. Yeah. So I'll just show you one more thing, which is,
Okay.
sorry, the question may be a little confusing. I think everybody understood what we were getting at, just we were talking about different ways.
Yeah, what's the property?
So this is a keyword argument to the dot amount, works with dot total also. So period to use, it's a long one, that's what we type. So if we wanted to convert this to monthly, we just use that period to use equals 12. And that's pretty common. I think that's what most of you guys were using in legal aid as monthly income. Let's put in one more thing, which is
Oh, so you're telling it to give, so this is actually changing the amount it's going to display, and then you explain in text in display what you're showing.
yes, exactly. Yeah. And we're going to put in a total income figure too here. This is the other thing that using the income class can help you with.
How is that different from, oh, you're adding, gotcha, to both the jobs together from you, yeah.
Exactly.
But your total income per month is the total of the job, right?
Yep, total of all the jobs that you have. And again, I didn't put in the currency. That's going to look weird. Let's do that.
And should we get practice from?
Python's not too bad. I don't know if anyone's ever used a programming language called Lisp. It's like all built around parentheses. Yeah. Okay. So that's the basic building blocks. So hopefully that makes you a little bit more familiar with how you would use the income class. And now you can see where to explore and learn about the other features. Just put in a couple of things. So jobs, we have something like, this is a helper function, name, address, phone. So if you put in those fields, it's a helper function to show what those are for the job.
Just for yourself or for employers?
For the employer,
Oh, right.
employer's name.
Does it say self?
The reason why it says self in there is because every method on a class can either operate on the actual object. So this is saying it works on the job.
Right.
It's something that we probably don't need to go into too much, but yeah.
Okay.
So there's something called a gross and a net amount. So if you wanted to collect those separately, you could. Sometimes you need to have both figures. This normalized hours lets you work with hourly jobs and say how many hours do you work in a month, even if they tell you how many hours they work in a week. So it just does that math for you. And that's the main. Let me see what else. Good to. You can filter incomes by type. So you can get a list of all the types of income that they have. So incomes, like you might want to know, is this a pension or is it something else? You can see who owns the income if it's something like a bank account. And they might have balances also or market values. So some assets might have assets are really incomes because they can earn money over time, as well as having a present value, and that's what the balance is. And then a market value could apply to something that's static, or at least at the time that you're recording it. So it might earn money over time, like a house can earn money over time, but it has a market value as well. And it might have a loan balance too associated with it. So all those things are built in.
What's matches?
That returns all of the items that match a particular type.
Oh,
So if you wanted to get a list of all the pensions,
right.
you don't know how many there are,
Or
got it that way.
benefits or something like that.
Yeah.
Is benefits one of the,
Not that top level isn't a built-in type. It would be more specific.
So it's like the size,
Yeah, TAFDC, DAEDC.
specific types of benefits, not benefits overall.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So let me copy that last version to the Slack. And I'm just going to put that as a new one.
Did you put the children one in? You know, I think I've been looking at the wrong Slack channel.
GBLS?
I don't know. I thought I was looking.
I'm not sure if I put the
I don't know what I
children one on there.
Yeah, because I've been looking for the children one, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to find.
I have children, well, like maybe I didn't do the whole actual, I have 8 children on.
I'm looking at the video somewhere. I can't remember.
So I wanted to explain how you could use the elements from scratch. But another thing you could do is use this pre-canned financial statement that I already built for the VLP project. And that can save you a lot of time. So we can include the actual financial statement interview file this way. Just going to show you like what are some of the naming conventions that I used inside that financial statement. So we have client, spouse, household. Client is an individual, spouse is an individual, household is a list of individuals. Then we have assets, vehicles, real estate, and expenses, which are appropriate kinds of lists that are from the income class. So an individual can have jobs, a client can have incomes. Sorry, clients and spouses and household members all can have jobs and incomes. And that's just referring to the naming convention there. Not all the questions are probably exactly the way you would want to ask them, but you can still use the canned interview and just override them with your more specific questions. So it works in order of how you're including the files. So if you have your includes section at the top of your interview, and then you add a more specific question that you want to use, then it will you'll use the last one in the file, basically, the one closest to the bottom of the file.
But if you you put your includes at the top of the,
yeah,
you know, with your code and your objects and your modules and everything, and you put the include file YAMLs up at the top,
yeah,
and then say your first question is what's your next. So you've got clients in your income, right? Good clients in there, right?
yeah.
So, but your first question is client name, and say that's mandatory, or it's in your code list mandatory. If that gets asked and you already have the answer to it, then when it goes to the include,
No, so it looks for which question to use from the bottom up.
even if you put it in the code. Oh no, because it doesn't matter.
It won't run it.
The variable name in the code, it'll take the question out of the financial statement rather than. So you know, in a way, you wouldn't even. Oh.
You shouldn't ever need to change the one you're including. You can just add your own version of the question.
Right, but you want to put that after.
After the include statement. Yeah.
I mean, after you add the financial statement in.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. No, it's a good thing to clarify. You see, so let's just take a quick look at the rules here. And I didn't in this example go through all of the rules in detail. It's just kind of the top level ones. So like I didn't handle teen parents or public versus subsidized housing. I just used the public and subsidized housing numbers. And I also don't handle households over 9 people.
10, 11.
Actually, I just stopped at 9. It seemed like it was big enough after I typed in those. So here's the basic information we need to know. We need to know I didn't do any of these eligibility because those don't really apply to needing the financial statement. We're just talking about the income and asset limits. So we want to know about household size and then a dollar figure. Anybody have an idea what kind of data structure would be good to represent this? And maybe data structure is too specific a word to use. Like if you were going to store this in your Docassemble interview, how would you do it? How would you represent it so that you could access the numbers?
You mean the definition versus list? Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about? Stop giving the answer away.
No, I'm not trying to.
No.
I mean, I want you to have the answer. So
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure what you mean by definition.
Well, you have these different lists, right? Not definitions, dictionary.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, dictionary or list. Those are both good choices.
I mean, you have definitions in dictionary. So dictionary.
Just want to remind you, so one way you could do this is you could have 10 variables, right? You could say household 1 limit, household 2 limit.
Right.
Have a giant if statement. An easier way is to use some kind of lookup table, and a dictionary or a list are both really good options. So a list, remember a dictionary, the difference between a dictionary and a list is lists, they're ordered by given numbers to retrieve them. Dictionaries, you can use some other kind of key value. It doesn't have to be a number. So really either could work here, because you can use a number dictionary key. I actually chose to use a dictionary key example. And the rest here is a little bit more straightforward. So we want to know, okay, does their income fall underneath the number on this table based on their household size? The first test. Next, we want to know, we're going to exclude some amount of income, which is $200. And the asset limit here is $5,000. So all the assets together can't be more than $5,000. A good thing, if you want to look at this and customize it, would be to take account, including the first $15,000 in value of the car, which I didn't do, and having a more specific question about the house would probably be a good thing to add into it. So here is the approach that I would take for this. First, let's make our new file here. We're going to put, I wish there were a way to copy from the slide. I'm not sure if there is, besides leaving.
You can go into edit, right?
Yeah, that's the only way. But, okay, so I'm going to make a new file in the playground here. And the point of this is to help you see, like, we've already done some things like this, but layering questions is one of the things Docassemble lets you do, and it can help you save a lot of time when you're rebuilding more. You don't have to do the same question twice. You should really only have to do it one time. Okay, so that's the first thing. We're including that canned financial statement. And let's take a closer look at this code block now. So I'm defining a couple of variables here. Grand total is going to be the total income of the client, the spouse, household.
Everybody in the household, right?
Yep. And then also the jobs and for each, for the household, spouse.
So how is it, so is the income, so, but you're, in a way though, you're separating out, so the client's job income is separate from their income?
Yep. we ask about it differently because there's a lot of information you need to know about a job that you don't need to know for other kinds of income, like Social Security, disability income.
But the way the income
Those are the variable
is
names.
set up,
Yeah.
the job income doesn't go into the income.
Correct.
total. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're mutually exclusive.
Yep. So storing them in different kinds of lists is helpful because you need to know different things for them.
So income. So the thing is, income originally was a class, and then you built the jobs list class.
There was what was it called, Jonathan? I think periodic income. It did a different thing. It wasn't the same thing, actually.
Yeah, there's a periodic list, and then I think there was an income subclass of that.
But I just had like a different idea for how to approach it because we had to gather some duplicates, and I think the built-in version assumes that you're going to choose from a static list, and each thing can only have one of that kind. So like if you had a list of types of income, like one would be Social Security, one would be pension, one would be whatever it might be, and you had to say if you had an item in each of those categories, but you couldn't add multiples. So I just did it a different way to make it more flexible, and there's some other methods that aren't in the original one. But I followed the same basic outline that was already there. So, yep, so we're doing the grand total, which is all the income that the person has. We have the assets total. Wait, that's actually going to be indented. That's part of the total, grand total here. Total value of the assets we want to know, which includes real estate. And then expenses we actually don't need for TAFDC. Actually, I can comment that out. Down here, we're defining a couple more variables. So we have an income limit. This is a dictionary. That's what the curly braces tell us. And it's basically just replicating this table here in code. And you have an asset limit we're defining, that's $5,000. And we're figuring out one more thing, which is how big is the household. So we don't make the person type in what's your household size. We already gathered the information from them about people who live with them. Yeah.
So just you go back to that TAFDC chart again, because I'm not sure why you picked one number instead of the other. I can't remember what the chart is. You know, there's the public subsidized housing.
Yep, I just chose the public subsidized housing one because it was the first one.
So there are two columns, right? One
is
your household size and you live in subsidized housing, and the other one is if you don't live in subsidized housing. So you ask the person, do they live in subsidized housing or not, and then you would have different income limits.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be the way to handle that, exactly. Yeah. So let's check, let's see. Let's try our final question here. And this is going to be a good test because I didn't try to code out first. Should be right. Okay.
Okay, are you going to put, you want to put a period in there, right? For what? When you tell somebody what their total
Where's that?
monthly income. So line 28, you want to say over, and what are we, is this annual? Or is it
Yeah, annual income.
Yeah.
And I guess
per year?
we actually want to know if it's per month, right? So earlier we already said period to use equals 12.
Yeah.
So it already is monthly.
So you just want to say per month.
Okay, so notice I didn't do what isn't in this file. I didn't have to write any questions about who the person is, how much they earn. Those are all taken from the built-in financial statement. And it's going to probably ask some of the questions in a weird order because of that. But it should work. Let's see.
And if it does, we'll ask it. You don't have any of those dots at the end, the little things at the end. But you need them at the end too? Or maybe they're there and go at the end.
Not sure what you mean, but let me give this a name first and we'll see.
It's no other one.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay, so I have a typo in here somewhere. Yeah, you can't hurt it by putting them in. We'll just skip the empty ones. Okay. So that's the sphere. Let's see if we can figure out where the mistake is. Oh. Anybody else see where it is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right after 3, that should be a colon instead of a comma.
Right. When I do give you this error information, it's helpful. I mean, when you can read it, it's been, oh gosh, well that's right.
Okay, so it asked my name, so. Right. So what kinds of income does Bob
We're
get?
just trying to figure this out, right? So we get the U instead of last name. I know that's coming from the income class, the financial statement class.
Yeah. Let's say, let's choose, choose TAFDC again. And the other thing that it should do is exclude people of SSI, by the way, which I didn't do. But let's say they get alimony and let's just say child support.
No, that's a little.
It shouldn't be doing this, because there already is a question, actually.
Yeah.
That has to do with me not specifying the order of questions. Because there's a different question which already handles, you already told me what kind of income it is. What did I say before? Just child support, just for consistency. All right, let's say that I have a spouse.
Now, other people who depend on me for support are not really household numbers of income, or maybe they are.
So that would be a place where you could override it with a more general question. Yeah, a more specific question, that is. And
There you go.
now we have a question about how many people. No, before we asked, do you have anybody who lives with you? Now we're asking the number.
Oh, how many, right?
Yeah. All right. All right. We can call them the grandparent. It's fine. Why not?
If you wanted the
Someone else give me a
grandparents.
name.
Hey.
Just filling in this out.
Yeah, my girlfriend, my girlfriend told me this right today.
Yeah, I know it.
So it definitely happens.
Oh, I know it happened. Don't go back to St. Louis and all the kids that I was teaching.
Someone else give me a name here.
Who's the second person who lives with you?
Yeah.
Lenny.
Brenda.
Hi,
Brenda Lenny. Go, go. Why not? All right. How old should Brenda Lenny be?
These are the dependents, right?
Yeah.
Not dependents.
Correct. And let's say that Jane doesn't have any income. We don't really care. Yeah. And this is asking me again. Just shouldn't
No,
really
no,
do.
your kids.
Oh, you're right, Bobby.
That's your grandpa.
My grandfather, right. Okay. And we're not going to give her any income either. So this is a more detailed question about a job that I have here. So it uses the autocomplete, let's say 197. All right. Okay. And if it's an hourly job,
Oh, right. Yeah.
you have a chance to enter that information. I just, here's how I phrase it: average number of hours worked each paycheck.
Yeah.
And then you have to say how often you get the paycheck. And it does ask for the net pay, which I never can calculate for good comparison. But ask for assets. Let's say we have savings only, and say the savings is owned by both parents.
Your household assets. so you pick the asset and then you say who owns it.
Yep. This should actually be using like the descriptive version of the name. So, but actually to check out.
Is that a variable name in there now? Using descriptive version rather than the value.
This is the variable,
Yeah.
basically the short name of it, and then there should be like
Right.
one that's capitalized that looks a bit nicer. Let's say it earns $1 in interest every year. Okay. So it didn't say anything about being qualified because we didn't qualify. We earned 16 a month. That's way too much. And it should say, like, we should have an else here. Okay. It's a little funny way to say it, but yeah. Well, there's two tests. There's an income test and an asset test. They passed the asset test, they didn't pass the income test. All right, so I'll put this on the Slack.
So if you were to, change that around, so you were to ask, instead of about all the assets, in a way, the way you're doing it is you would get somebody to essentially list all the assets in the household and then assign them to different household members.
You can select the assets person by person.
Person by person.
Yeah, you can do that.
And that would be like a nested repeat.
Yeah, I can show you what the code does if you want. So, by the way, new feature, which I didn't tell you about, Jonathan added right when we asked him to, is full screen editing.
Oh, people are going to be over the moon about that.
Just add F11. Hit
Thank
F11.
you, Jonathan.
F11?
Yeah.
Oh, that's killer.
What did you just say?
F11. That's the
Oh, right.
for it.
That's perfect.
There's no menu option for it. You just have to press F11. You have to know you can press F11.
Yes,
and you
no,
have to press
okay. People are going to be, because everybody I'm working with on this is saying, isn't there a way to do this? Which, I mean, it's nice to be forced to use VS Code because you learn about that and force you to back up and share things easily, but it's really nice because then you can just test it. It's when you're right there, can't you?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we do collect jobs per person.
Right.
In the household, and this is the code that combines it into the big list.
Oh, you do the for inside the if.
Yeah.
Inside the collection.
If there's anybody in the household, then we go through each person in the household.
Yeah.
We go through each job in the household, and we add that job to our list of jobs.
So, and this sounds like you do it as you ask about each person. No, you don't. You could do this, right, you could do this separately. So you can ask about all the people in your household, and then you can go back. You can say, and now I'm going to ask you about the jobs or the incomes of each person. And then you can do your for, then, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it in either way, really. Let me show you one more thing, which is not going to be like to completely absorb right now.
Mm-hmm. No, it's there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes we wanted specific questions, right? Like we didn't necessarily need to do this, but what is your name?
Yeah.
You pointed that out. We do want to have a question like that. What is your spouse's name? But a lot of times we wanted to avoid writing the same question over and over again.
Yeah.
So we have this summary of the jobs. It's written one time.
The one about.
And it uses this special syntax called generic object. This is a reason to use objects in your Docassemble code. If you do that, you're able to use generic objects, and what it is, it's a special question that works for any of that object type. This is what it means. So just like we use I to refer to an element in a list, X is the name for a variable that an object where you don't know what the object actually is yet. So that's not the best example. Probably a better one would be if you go down to like the job question. Let's see. Well, here we go. We wrote this one question. It's like, what types of income does the person have? We only had to write it one time. We showed it for each person that's part of the household. And by using that syntax X, X stands in for spouse.jobs, client.jobs, household member X.jobs.
Could you do something like this? And I'm still trying to get my head around. Have you come up with any sort of rules or guidelines for when you put code in questions versus code in the code box? What I'm thinking is to get around that, if you're Bob Smith, and instead of saying, what is Bob Smith's income, or what is Bob Smith's first job or something?
Oh, okay.
Could you do some code in the question that said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let me just think. So, basically, if variables with this variable, like the first variable, the value of the first variable, make this word be your, otherwise make it be the name.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. And we don't need to write it because it's already built into the individual class.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that at all. So I think that, yeah, exactly. I guess we probably talked about that before. Yeah. Now you have context for it, right?
Well, I had context, I just didn't see how to do it. That was the thing. Okay.
So there's a couple of things. So objects can have a possessive capability, and individuals can be a person. So they can say you if you use it that way. Yeah, object possessive is going to just say, that's the generic version of it. So that turns into, what is the grantor's name? It takes the name of the variable that you use. So if I said, and I use that style here for,
what kind of income well, right.
It will use the person's name, actually, if the person's name is known. If it's not, it'll use the variable name, I think.
Well, but then you're still not getting to the you.
And if it is you,
and then you have to change the form of the verb as well, right?
Yeah, there's verb conjugation.
you use the dot possessive method, and it handles all that for you. And like that's one of the nice things about this, right? Because like in hot docs, you'll understand this, Caroline. Like you had to make a million little computations,
right?
And for each
yes.
person, not just one time.
Right.
It's just done one time. So, but Jonathan, if I wanted to add that to my financial statement interview that someone else included, that's supposed to be an initial block, right? Where you say the user is client.
Yeah, you need an initial block that declares which object in your interview represents the current user. I think it's called.
And it's that built-in variable user, right?
Well, no. You have to. I think it's like set info or something like that you have to run in your initial code. Yeah.
Here we go.
Here we go.
So this here.
So just run that, and then if the name of your client is just client, and that's an individual, then any question that refers to the client will use the your form of the question. And there's also a method called does verb, which will conjugate the verb appropriately, depending on whether it's first person or third person.
Does verb.
It's a function.
It's a method.
Oh, it's a method. A method of a person.
Yeah, method of the individual, I think.
How would you put that in the text of the question? You would put that. So we did set.
This wouldn't go into the
No, that
text
goes
of
into
questions,
the-
its own
that
standalone
goes
code
into-
block.
Right, but the does verb thing, that,
Yeah, try
Right.
searching for does verb on that page.
Oh, sorry. That's a good question. Like Caroline has to, I don't want to skip that, but what is the override way that this happens? So if I put this in my financial statement.yaml and then I include it in another file, can I have a different initial block that overrides this one?
Yeah, if it's loaded later, it'll override it.
Okay. I wasn't sure with initial blocks, they run every time. That's why I wasn't sure
Right.
what happened. Okay.
so there is, so you would have your include before your code.
Let's see.
So that you put your include before your code here?
Yeah, you would put the include first,
if you want to
then your
override it.
initial block that overrode it.
But what I should really do is add this text into the financial statement.yaml. So
Yeah,
it's built in there, and people can still. I didn't want to do that if it wasn't something you could override, but it sounds like you
Yeah.
can. So.
No, you can.
So, and that basically you say to the question, you could ask a question in the financial statement, are you filling this out for yourself or somebody else? And
Right, and then you could, if you wanted to have that question,
then you could
you could override
yeah,
this
like that.
that way.
So then, so can we see how this method, the verb method thing works?
Sure. Yeah, I think we could find that right in here, right? It should be in the same spot. Oh, I don't know why that would be. Yeah. I mean, it's good to look at these. So here we're just named that citation. I don't know if you've ever thought about using that. So that's kind of nice too. I guess it's probably alphabetically higher in the list. What's it called? Does verb? Here we go.
Does verb. Like the verb.
Maybe there's an example above it that's helpful.
That's for a regular list.
Yeah, I guess I didn't document this hardly at all.
That's okay.
Well, at least you have it in here.
Yeah, I should get some
For a
examples
list.
of that.
Must be something for a person too. Here we go.
There we
This
go.
is the example. Yeah, I was looking at a list instead of a person.
Oh, I see. So you would put that, so if you're going to do that in the, you would, wouldn't you be, no, I guess you'd want to put that in your code somewhere, wouldn't you? You wouldn't want to put it in every question.
No, you would use it, does verb, in the question.
Well, the thing is, though, you know throughout, if you've already set client as user,
Right.
that means that every time you ask a client, every time you have a question, you ask of the client, you ask of everybody else, you've got to put that in there.
Right.
Whereas if you put,
The benefit of doing it in the question, so let's go back to like this
Yeah.
generic question example.
because you had your.
We only write it once.
Yeah,
So we can have x dot does verb. It'll
Right.
work for every version of the question, whether it's for the person, whether it's for
Right.
their spouse, or for
Right.
the other household
Yeah, yeah.
members.
And
I was
there's
thinking if you could do it in it, go ahead, sorry, Johnson, go ahead.
and there's also the method that you could use x dot possessive income, and so then that would be your income or Fred Jones's
Right.
income.
Yeah,
Which is what I should do. And then I wouldn't have the apostrophe outside of the brackets. It
right.
would be
Your
inside.
possessive would already-
It would be done by the method on
Yeah.
the person. So, yeah, that can be pretty powerful. It's like, it's one of the things that can drive you crazy with having to make a million variables and
Yeah,
hot
I
dogs that you
know.
don't have to do in this.
Well, Seth and I were just doing something, and I thought, I know there's a way to do this. What do you call this when you use X? You can ask a question.
It's called generic object. So if we find
generic
that,
object.
that's
Because I think we were just doing some, or maybe I'm doing something like that
Yeah.
now on the,
I would say like it's definitely an advanced feature,
yeah.
but knowing that it's there, like you go through it, you've done it the normal way.
You could
Next
have to
time
do it-
you
yeah.
learn it, you're like, okay, I'm not going to type the code a bunch of times.
Well, the
I'm
thing
going
is,
to just do it.
if you do it the normal way, where you type it a bunch of times, then you see what the pattern is. I think that's the difficulty, is
Knowing if there's going to be a pattern.
Well, you know there's a pattern, you just don't know what the pattern is until you write it 400 times and you say, oh yeah, I'm using these words over and over and over again, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a reason to write two versions of the same question almost ever.
Right.
You shouldn't be having to copy and paste like identical or very close to identical.
So that's what I was thinking about, you know, in our Dead Broke Dad thing, is that you ask very similar questions. So what I've done is I've broken up the VTA file, the complaint, and you get a VTA order. They're consistent because they're checkbox, you know. But if somebody's done their own complaint or they've had their own attorney do it, it's going to look really different. But the questions are the same, right? I mean,
yeah.
How much is the amount? How often is it? How many children do you have? You know, all those things. So I was thinking there must be a way to do it this way.
This could be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to
maybe not.
say that again, or have you say that again. It might be a list. It might just be a list too, right? So I'm not sure. That's another variation on that idea.
So I didn't know we were going to have Jonathan as a guest speaker this afternoon. That's exciting.
Any questions that you have, Jonathan?
No.
Okay.
Was there
Any questions
something
people
else?
have for?
Was there something else that we're going to ask him about before we asked about the screen expansion thing?
Maybe I'll stop the recording now.
Okay.
Because I think probably we finished the recording part. Let me see. Where did I do this? Well, I hope I was recording.